So I like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land we're on today, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. So I'm just going to set the context for ethics and where it came from, and the amount of time it's actually taken us to get here today, which has been nearly 3,000 years. And what's of interest now is we're actually trying to build a set of ethics into machines within the space of just a very few short years, and how that sits. So I'm going to look at ancient Greek civilization, which might sound a little bit boring, but when you get into it, it's really cool, and some of the things they actually did back then were quite exciting and interesting. So I'm going to start off with my 4 favourite Greek philosophers: Thales, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So I'm sure you've all got a favourite Greek philosopher. Yeah, anyone? Aristotle? I have to say, man after my own heart, Aristotle is my favourite.
Plato's
as well.
the man.
Well, the thing about Plato, of course, that he did a lot of work, but he was more the middleman there. So start off with Thales. So back a long way, 624 BC, he was one of the first that came up and started to look at a more scientific approach to how we view the world. And, really interesting, and started to challenge on things that were happening. He explained natural objects. He was regarded as one of the first option traders, really good with geometry and math. And I think I heard a rumour that he actually started up a defence contracting business. Is that right? That's made a fair bit of money. I'm not sure about that one, but anyway. So Socrates. Socrates, really smart guy. There is some debate about whether he actually existed, but or whether he was just a myth that was put up by Plato. So smart guy, developed a number of things, big on morals, ethics, irony. He was president of the Thales fan club. Loved Thales, he thought it was great. And as they went through, and as we do in academia, you build on the shoulders of the person that went before you. So Socrates followed Thales, but he was bone lazy. He went around, he talked to a lot of people, he trained quite a few people, but he never wrote anything down, okay? So all the writing was actually done by Plato. So he challenged the rich and powerful on their wisdom and was training up the local people around Greece. And he came unstuck and over a few things, and they thought he was actually going against the government, and they sentenced him to death. And because he had such this high moral standing about what he thought about things, he said, oh, okay. And they said, well, but because you're such a cool dude and so smart, we'll give you a chance. You can leave town, just don't come back, and we won't chase you. And he said, no, if you think I'm worthy of putting to death, put me to death. And so they did. But he came up with some really good ideas. So probably the best thing is that he taught Plato. And he followed Socrates, and Plato did a huge amount of things. So he did all the writing, he did all the work, Plato did. Got into politics, he got into trouble as well, as a lot of these philosophers do. He had founded the Academy, and his most famous protege was Aristotle, who was pretty cool. He thought that mathematics and abstract thinking was the basis for morals and how we live. And he had a mystical approach to the soul, and in fact, I think he was the first Jedi Knight. So he challenged against this whole thing about religion. So and thought that the material world had really something to offer there. So Aristotle, I guess, of course, my favourite, was a student of Plato, founded his own school. And he was a tutor for Alexander the Great, and gave Alexander and a number of other kings a really good grounding and schooling on how to manage people, how to think about strategy, and how to operate in the world. And he was the guy he was like the principal of the best boys' school in Greece. So what they did was all the rich people and the kings and that sent their sons to his place. That's also an interesting thing about all these 4 Greek philosophers. Of course, they're all men. And what was really surprising is we don't see much in the way in the history of women having a place in philosophy back then, and not until probably about the late 19th century is we start to see women starting to emerge as philosophers, and there's some really outstanding philosophers into the 20th century that start to emerge and more involved in informing some of the political movements both in Europe and the US. But up until then, Aristotle, really cool dude. One of the things that Aristotle did really well, and he's renowned for, is he came up with these things called the 12 virtues. And what Aristotle and Plato before him said that they were trying to come up with what makes a good life. So what makes a person, what should they strive to be effective and happy in their lives, and what could those virtues or descriptions be? And Aristotle spent a fair bit of time on that and came up with these. So what he said is that these virtues, and they fall between extremes. So the main thing he said is that you've got to have a balance in life. You know, you can't go to each extreme. So for example, on courage, the extremes of courage is cowardice, or rashness. So you don't want either one of those. You want to sort of sit in the middle, and have a balance in your life. Temperance, liberality, magnificence, pride, honour, good temper, friendliness, truthfulness, wit, friendship, justice. So he and the other philosophers sort of said, if you have a life, this is what you should aim for in life, to have these types of virtues and get that balance. And if you do that, then you should live a good and virtuous life. So you can see how this starts to underpin where we might be actually going with morals and then ethics. So an alternative one to that is one here that I really like, which is by the American Indians, which is very similar. Humility, perseverance, respect, honour, love, sacrifice, truth, comparison. Again, something very similar. So you can see how going through time and over these thousands of years, and there are other ones as far as particularly in India and also in Persia, came up with similar types of concepts. How we've evolved over nearly 3,000 years to come up with a bit of a guide to how we should live our lives and what is a virtuous life, or what are the sorts of morals that we should impinge within ourselves and demonstrate through a series of ethics. So, Richard, I think we'll have a definition for ethics, as quite often most of us do. This is a popular one. The ethics are the rules of conduct for a particular class of human actions or a particular group or culture. So, but then how does that transfer to machines? Can you say the rules of conduct for a particular machine or a particular piece of software or artificial intelligence are still the same? Morals, which is more about a personal perspective about, what is our own thoughts about how we're directed. And, we learned this through our families and our parents. And, as I said, this has grown up through, a direction about how to live a good life over the last 3,000 years. So, when we start to look at morals and ethics, so if morals influence and inform our ethics, our framework about how we should operate, can we actually trust machines to actually develop morals? And so when they're actually developing their own rules about how they should act, and that's potentially where we're going, can they actually be trusted? Well, we'll see. And to what degree? And there's various ends of the spectrum about, how much liberty do we provide technology to be able to make those rules? Because you can imagine the rules that we have in a set of ethics for AI can get incredibly complex. And there's potential there to allow the machines, or an AI to actually develop its own moral compass. And is that likely to happen, and where will it go? So in saying that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Richard Lucas. So and while I'm giving him a quick intro, I'll ask Richard to come up and set up his his laptop.
Now we're going to try to do something technologically difficult.
Yeah, which is connect completely different pieces of software. So I first met Richard at University of Canberra back in about 2004.